Hello and welcome to another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. Today we're going to be talking more about my 10/22 favorite things, and today I'm going to talk about scopes and optics. Kind of a funny thing because my favorite scope that I have, the budget scope that I usually buy for all my rifles, I don't actually have one mounted on any of my 10/22s right now. But we'll talk about the optics that I do have mounted on my 10/22s and what I choose for my go-to parts whenever I'm buying one to install on one. Again, budget-minded stuff here that I've tested out and has worked fine in the past for me. You may have different opinions on that. I welcome them, but let's get into today's video. All right, so getting into what I choose for optics when I buy a set of optics for one of my rifles. Now, again, probably poor examples that I have here because my two 10/22 target models that I have, both of them came with scopes on them, and I have not wanted to change them yet because they're pretty good. So let's talk about what's on my rifles first, and then I'll talk about what I typically buy. This is a BSA Sweet 22 scope. These I really like. This is an older model. I can tell just based on the design, the way the turrets are set up and things. Let's talk about why this is a good choice for 22s. First off, you have these thread-on caps to keep dirt and dust out of them when they're not being used. So instead of having a cheap cover with some elastics on it like this guy has, which work fine as well, you have some pretty secure screw-on covers. Now, sometimes I tend to like these better because they're quicker to get off. So if you were like out hunting, you obviously wouldn't want a screw-on cap because it takes too long to get it off, unless you're just gonna, sit in a stand and try to plink at animals or whatever you need to do when you're hunting. But if you're walking through the field and you see a rabbit and you need to pull the covers off your scope really fast, these elastic ones are a little bit easier to use. But anyway, these have screw-on lens covers. The Sweet 22 is set up specifically for 22 caliber, and they have 22 long rifle and 22 Winchester Magnum as well. But you can see on the turret of the scope, it actually says 22 40 grain. And if I turn this, it has different settings on here for ranges. So it has 40 yard, I think that says 75 yards, 100 yards, 120 or 125. So you actually have a rangefinder built onto this thing based on the bullet weight that you have and how far you want to shoot. Then if we go up here, you can actually change the focus based on where you're shooting, anywhere from 15 yards all the way up to 100 yards, or infinity actually, and that's just changing the focus. And then, you have your standard windage knob on here. So the way these are set up is the elevation knob is actually going to change based on the bullet drop of a 22 projectile. So there's really no guesswork when you're setting this up for distance. You just need to set your windage on there, and then on the front of this, set how far you're shooting to try to get the correct focus of the scope itself. This particular one is a 2 to 7 power. I typically like a 3 to 9 better. You can get these in a 3 to 9 as well. But again, this is what came on this rifle when I bought it, and it's a pretty sweet scope. It works really well, so I don't really plan on changing that one. I was going to change the rail on the top of this and the rings, but honestly, it's set up, it doesn't work. It doesn't move, it's rock solid. So I don't really want to touch that one right now. That's exactly as I bought the rifle. It functions flawlessly. It shoots really well. It's accurate. So I'm going to leave that one alone for now. The only thing I might do in the future is put a 3 to 9 power scope on it, just because when I'm shooting at 100 yards, I like to have a little bit more magnification than a 7. But really, 7 power is all you really need. I just happen to like a little bit more. So let's set this one aside and talk about what I have on my other 10/22 target model. This is a Nikon Pro Staff, and this is a 3 to 9 power 40 millimeter tube. It's probably a bit overkill for this particular gun. I don't think it is made for a 22. I think it's made for a larger caliber. That scope is actually a lot more money than I typically pay for mine. I think that one, you can find them used for around $120, but I think they go for closer to $200 new if you can find them. I think this particular model has been discontinued, but that is a fantastic scope. Again, super crystal clear glass. The mounts on it are pretty good, and I don't know what type of rings these are. They were on it when I got it. This has the factory 1022 rail on the top of it, which allows you to use either Weaver or Picatinny rail. So that works out pretty well. And that scope has been fine. Again, not what I would typically go out and buy, but it's a great option for this particular rifle. And because it's already on there, I'm not going to take it off. So now that I've told you what's on my second target model, let's talk about what I typically would buy. So this is a budget-minded, again, made in China scope that you can buy. They're readily available. You can buy them online. I typically buy mine at Walmart because they have them in stock, and I like walking into a place, buying something and walking out versus ordering it online a lot of times. But I have found some really, really good deals on these. This is a 3 to 9 by 40. You can also get these in a 4 to 12 by 40, which is what I put on my more dedicated target rifles. So my Ruger Precision 22 rimfire has one of these in a 4 by 12 on it. I believe my Ruger American in 223 has a 4 to 12 as well, just because I typically take those out and try to shoot a little bit more accurately or at further distances. But this particular one, 3 to 9 by 40, this is what I put on all of my mid-caliber guns. My 7.62 39 has one of these on it. My 450 Bushmaster has a similar one on it. It's actually a Simmons 8-point. But I like the Pro Target better because it has a mil-dot reticle on it. So rather than just having a standard crosshair, you have some relative range of what you need to adjust for built into the scope, just based on wind shift and things like that. So when you're out at the range with 22, oftentimes you do have issues where, you know, if you sight in your scope for 50 yards, when you go to 100 yards, you're going to have quite a bit of bullet drop if you're shooting like a standard 40 grain, 1050 feet per second round. Well, if you want to account for that, normally you would have to adjust your elevation. But with this scope, you can kind of gauge on the dots in the scope what you need to do. So if the wind is blowing from left to right and you're missing the bullseye by an inch or 2 inches, you can kind of move over one dot and calculate for the wind, also calculate for the bullet drop at elevation by just going up a dot on the mil dots. So these work out really well. They come with covers that are built into them. Well, I mean, they slide on and off, but instead of having the elastic with the covers on there, it comes with its own covers. And this is a brand new one. I haven't even put it on anything yet. These come with a 30 millimeter tube, so you need to buy 30 millimeter rings when you put them on. They do not come with rings. But the appeal of these for me is, like I said, they're budget minded. If you get the 3 to 9 by 40, these usually go, I think, for around $60 or less, somewhere between like $56 and $60 a piece for this particular model. If you get the 4 to 12 power, they're about $82, again, at Walmart. And if I buy them in the store, I can take them home and put them right on my rifle. So this is actually my go-to scope. I have, I don't know, 8 or 9 of these on different rifles that I have. I've never had one lose zero. I've never had one fall apart. I know some people said they had luck with that, where they fell apart. But in my experience, these work out really well. I really like them. They're budget-minded. And the good thing is if they ever fail, you can just return it to Walmart because they're pretty good with their returns and things like that. So that's the Pro Target 3 to 9 by 40. That's my go-to budget scope. For rings, again, budget-minded. These are Sniper brand rings that I buy off eBay. This is a single piece mount that goes on a Picatinny rail. This is the 30 millimeter mount. If you wanted 1-inch rings, you can get the separate rings, or you can get this same style mount for a 1-inch. These typically go, a set of rings, either this style or this, go for about $15. And again, I believe they're made in China. Yeah, they are. So yes, I know they're made in China. They're not the best quality, but the reason I like these, not only can you get them in separate heights, this is a mid height, you can get a low height or a tall height for different risers or different cheek welds that you have on your rifles, but they have 2 screws on each side of the mounts. So when you tighten these down, you can get a really good clamping force on your scope tube. I've never had one crush a scope tube yet. I've never had any of these screws strip out. And then when you put it on the rail, the thumb screw that you have here also has a hole in it, so you can stick the Allen key in there and give it a good, nice torque down on that to hold it in place. So I have these on my 450 Bushmaster, my 223, my 7.62 x 39, and I think on 1 or 2 of my 22 rifles as well. I've had really good luck with these scope rings. They're super budget minded. And then also for my 1022, my go-to mount for the scope, if I have to buy one, is this Weaver Classic multi-slot base, part number 430T. And the reason I like to use these, they're made to go directly onto a 1022. So they have the holes in the correct locations for the top of the receiver on the 1022. Very easy to install on there. You put a little bit of blue Loctite on the screws when you put them in so they don't loosen up. And you have a bunch of variation on where you can put your mounts for your scope. So in this particular case, if I needed more or less eye relief, I can actually move this scope mount back and forward a couple of slots. If you use these individual rings, you actually have a lot more adjustability because you can put 1 ring at the back, 1 ring in the middle, and you can move them back and forth on your scope and move the rings back and forth on the rail. So rather than having the 2-piece scope mounts that you used to have on the 1022s, I like these a lot better. They offer a lot more adjustability, and you can use any Picatinny rail type mount on the top of your 1022. So even if you wanted to mount a red dot instead of a scope, they'll go right on here as well. Or if you wanted to use a laser, you could put it right on that as well. A lot more simple to use. They're very sturdy, and these things are like $10 or $15 at Cabela's. They're super cheap. They usually have them in stock. And like I said, this one, I thought it said on it for 1022, but I'm not sure it does. I think I had to look it up. But I believe the 430T is for a 1022. Oh, Ruger 1022, it says it right there. Matte finish, fits Ruger 1022. So that's what I use, my budget options for my 1022. The Simmons Pro Target scope is what I typically buy new. Sniper brand rings, which are about 15 bucks, and then this Weaver mount. So that's going to conclude another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews, talking about my 1022 favorite things. In this particular video, we talked about my optics that I like to choose. Again, typically I choose a Simmons Pro Target because they're readily available, they're relatively inexpensive, and they've proven themselves to me, at least on my rimfires and mid-caliber guns, that they work well, hold a 0. And I do like that mil-dot reticle, so you can kind of adjust for windage and elevation based on distance that you go out. Thanks for watching another edition of Cranky Gun Reviews. If you guys have any questions, if you want to see anything else about my 1022s or have any comments, please leave them down below. Ask me any questions. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. God bless America, and make sure you support your 2A rights.